So, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome Dr. Neeta Verma, Director General, National Informatics Center, NIC, to have a fireside chat with us. To moderate the fireside chat, we have Mr. Kailash Nath Adhikari, MD Governance Now, and Shri Gaurav Agarwal, Senior Director, Enterprise Business, VMware India. Over to you, Mr. Adhikari.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pragya. Ma'am, namaskar. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome, Gaurav. Thank you so much for this tech talk on Cloud with NIC 2020. And I'll first begin with ma'am. Ma'am, we all know that we are living in a pandemic world. So what were the digital transformation initiatives being at the helm of NIC? What were the digital transformation initiatives undertaken by NIC so that a seamless services were assured not only to citizens but also to government organization? And what were your own personal experiences while coordinating with various government organizations and ministries during such time when the work from home was the new mandate and is currently also like a new mandate?
Thank you. I hope I'm audible well to everyone.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, great. So good afternoon, everyone. See, NIC being the technology partner of the government has been supporting government not only at the central government level, even the state governments and with our district offices, even the district administration, to monitor and manage pandemic as well as the associated situations of lockdown and all other challenges which came across. So if I really categorize these initiatives which we have taken during pandemic or supported government, maybe primarily in 3 or 4 main categories. Our first line of response, which was when the lockdown happened, was basically video conferencing services. Through this video, we quickly had to, scale our video conferencing infrastructure to be able to support 1,000 to 1,500 video conferencing sessions per day among various functionaries, right from Honorable President of India to Prime Minister, going to cabinet ministers and then chief secretaries to even district administration, because it was needed to understand the situation on the ground and then take appropriate measures. Also see that how do we really take care of various challenges, whether it's essential of supply of essential goods, or it was challenges of shortage of masks or sanitizers and things like this. So a lot of meetings we have facilitated while people were still at home. They were not able to. Initial lockdown, if you remember, movement was extremely, people were scared, and also movement was kind of very, very restricted. So a lot of meetings with the government and a lot of policy level decisions, lot of monitoring of the war rooms. We've supported people running while operating from their homes. If you remember, this was also a last week of financial year. So the second thing came that we had to do this financial year closing, and which happens only on files, and you have to take all those approvals and all. So for that, then we have this solution called e-office, which is basically, all your files are basically moving in the digital form, and digital form, they can move from one office to other office, one ministry to other ministry, from district administration to state. This was already in place, but during this time, suddenly the two requirements came. First, suddenly the utilization of this increased almost, in fact, super exponentially, I should say. There we really got lucky because this was all working on the cloud infrastructure, so we could quickly scale. But second thing is we had to provide now the secure channels for people to access these files and all from home, which was a lot of work because we had to enable everyone to be coming over VPN. Then there were different applications of different departments. So that was this e-office enablement became a big thing, and people, hundreds and thousands of files were, created, processed during this COVID period. Not only financial year got closed successfully, at the same time, a lot of these guidelines, policies got formatted, a lot of funds got dispersed. All those files we supported moving on file. People could comfortably operate from home, but while the functioning was going on smooth as in fact, during these times, government has to function more than what it normally functions because their regular operations have to happen. And also this special measures to handle these kind of pandemic situations and lockdown situations had to happen. Third thing which happened, if you remember, there was a lot of this migrant labor issue came, and then there was a need for transfer of funds to people who suddenly had no jobs and had no money to kind of this thing. So under MG Narega and various other state schemes. So we have a platform called Direct Benefit Transfer platform, in which the money from the bank to from the government can be directly transferred to the bank account of each individual beneficiary. We supported almost every department, the central central government, as well as many of the state governments, UP, Bihar, down south also quite a few states, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, in transfer of funds to these migrant laborers and as well as other beneficiaries who were in distress. Money could be almost instantly transferred to these accounts. That was another big support which was extended. Plus, for the pandemic itself, many of our state offices, work with state government. We have worked with Ministry of Health, right from, assessing the situation for the pandemic, supporting the testing activity. We have RT-PCR app, and then going forward to seeing the availability of COVID hospitals, our preparedness. First lockdown, a lot of work was happening. How many COVID hospitals to be opened? How many beds to be put in to take care of the peak situations? A lot of planning and a lot of management in terms of provision of oxygen cylinders, ventilators at the right time. So that a number of systems got developed, management of people under quarantine, getting a status of people in home isolation. So each NIC state center has parallelly supported a lot of systems. But one app which kind of became a national app and a household was Arogya Setu, which all of you are kind of aware, and it is today one of the largest contact tracing app in the world, with 158 million people using it as of today. So like this, it just
naturally
happened.
A lot of initiatives were undertaken by NIC so that it could brace up to the situation. Gaurav?
Thank you, and ma'am, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. And to be honest, e-office, for example, whenever I talk to Railtel as well, they keep talking about how successful the transformation of railways has been because of the e-office application deployment for railways through Railtel as well. So that indeed is an application that's transforming the way government officers operate and work. Ma'am, my first question to you was, obviously NIC was first of the block with Meghraj as a cloud being offered to government entities, etc., and that service being. In the current pandemic, we see a lot of demand for things like desktop as a service, working from home. So how do you see Meghraj as a cloud evolve to meet such requirements from other government agencies or public sector units when they want these kind of facilities?
Yeah, so in fact, if you look at, as I always say, the cloud has been our one of the key success contributors, I should say, to be able to scale all our infrastructure, whether it's our messaging services, whether it was our e-office itself, and a lot of, like you see during this time, even MyGov as a platform has been doing a humongous service in terms of outreach to citizens. So that also works on our cloud. So that way, cloud has really helped us quickly scaling any application when needed. Work from home is there. In fact, now what we have done, seeing while this uncertainty, we all wish after some time we'll be getting out of it. But I think a lot of good things which has emerged from here, particularly from technology point of view, as I see the virtual VC meetings and work from home or work from anywhere for that matter will continue to happen. It may not be in full-fledged as today because people have seen benefits of it. Sometimes for an hour's meeting, we used to travel for the other side of the country and waste 2 days to just do an hour's meeting because we were not used to, were not really comfortable and had not seen that how effective these meetings could be. But during this COVID, people have appreciated and understood. And today, now when I'm getting a meeting notices, VC is the first default. It's very rarely that you've been asked to kind of come and attend. And I'm sure as we go, so we need to really scale that infrastructure. And lot of initial our VC was all studio based, but all new VC will be cloud based. So we really need to scale infrastructure and VC services. Work from home, we have built a platform which is work from home platform so that the employee or an officer get almost similar environment as he gets in his office, whether it's access to his calendar, access to his PA, or access to commonly used access to commonly used documents. So we have a team in NIC has done a very innovative platform. We're just finalizing it. So we'll definitely need, and desktop as a service also for the development teams will be needed. So we are very actively working on a plan that how do we really scale this infrastructure and bring services. Another thing which we are very actively considering is because, you know, now a lot of people have observed the people who had an edge on digitalization, who were already digital, had much less disruption than people who were not that advanced in digitalization, because they couldn't continue their services. So that appreciation of technology or digitalization has come in a big way. So I'm anticipating that we'll get a lot of requests from all quarters of government, small government entities, to go for digital, having their websites, having their portals, having their backends automated. And today, for all these, we need to support cloud service. So we are seeing, why can't we bring a lot of software as a service kind of models, whereas routine things which any government entity will need, they need not really get into development. It should be available to them as a service, and they could simply use it, and they don't really need to bother of sizing and anything. For example, we already have a service which is called Secure Scalable Website as a Service, to which we call SWAS. Already almost all district websites have been migrated to this platform. So through this, if tomorrow any entity wants to have a website, they could vary. So we will scale this service. Similarly, if you look at, we have a Service Plus platform, which is a low code, practically no code platform. So in which today, supposing if a small entity wants to deliver a service to citizen, let's say as simple as this, giving a birth certificate. So they don't have to write any code to this. They just go there, configure what is the information they have to ask from the citizen, who will be the officer at the back who will be approving it and who will be issuing it. Just configure those things in that tool and your service is live. And hundreds of state government services have been made live. So these things we want to promote more SaaS kind of a thing, so that it becomes simpler for the newer entities to come on board and digitalize their internal functioning as well as their services.
Sure, ma'am, and I genuinely agree with you on the fact that I think the IT function is appreciated a lot more. For example, I'll just give you a personal example, and I was thinking this just last week as well. For an interview process, I had to fly to San Francisco. The company invested in a business class ticket. For a one-day trip, I spent 4 days going and coming for a 2-hour interview. Right from, I went from India to SFO and then came back. So something like that, such a waste of time and resources, which could be so easily done with technology, as long as you have the right experience in built-in technology with the right quality of service. Leading to the cloud question, ma'am, a lot of mature government organizations like Ministry of Finance, departments like CBEC, CBDT, have had their own, or GST, and have their own data centers and their own infrastructures per se as well. Now with this maturity and this acceptability of cloud coming in more and more, what role do you see NIC to play, or the government's thought process to play on how do we use hybrid as a service, right? For example, how do we not either be completely on cloud or completely be on-prem, but how do we decide what's the right continuum to be on hybrid? And do you see a change in approach happening? And do you see government agencies adopting the hybrid approach as we move forward a little more?
See, if you look at it as government, we had empaneled cloud service providers almost, I think, now 2 years ago. So that was an intention that so while we are on-prem, we are again on cloud. So one is a private cloud and other is a public cloud. Obviously, public cloud, because of its economy of scale, can give you far more benefits in terms of quickly giving you a huge resource. So supposing if you have an application where you have you perhaps need a huge CPU resource for only, let's say, 1 day in a month, or maybe for 2 hours in a month, or 2 times in a year. So for moving that particular application for a day and then getting those processing done, coming back, this makes a very good proposition. Again, there are a lot of information in the government which is public domain information, simple websites and all. They could also be moved to public cloud easily. There is no this thing. The challenge today is because every ministry need to actually define what is their public information, what is their sensitive information, what is their critically sensitive information. This is something cannot be defined by IT ministry. Each ministry knows the sensitivity of. Once they define this information, then one can say, okay, whatever is your public domain information, or maybe whatever is not so sensitive, can be easily hosted on the public cloud. There's no issue onto it. But many of the departments are yet in the process of doing this classification. So if that gets done, we'll see a lot of traction towards hybrid kind of a situation. Second thing, which I don't know how will it happen, when we engage, like today, we have already empaneled these agencies, the cloud service providers, who are hosting their data centers in India, to which we call CSPs, on GEM. So people can easily go and acquire cloud services on the GEM. The basic services, CPU and those PaaS and IaaS kind of services are there on the GEM, and they can easily go and procure. And some departments have done that job also. But when you do this engagement, you will do for 2 years, 3 years, max for 5 years. That's how government procurements in India are normally there. These clouds have, while they have kept generic, they have also started offering a lot of native services, which are very proprietary to that particular cloud. And which are very attractive proposition, because building an application becomes far more easier if you start using those native applications. So there's a pro to this. But the challenge is, once you have done this, then you have to be continuing on that cloud. So if you've used Lambda service of AWS, then you have to be continuing. Your application will not work anywhere else. But in government, continuing repeated contracts, how will you give it to the same cloud service provider? That is where you get stuck. So either we have to, this, as I said, this native services also has a positive aspect to it. So either the procurement models need to be changed, so that you can, once you have got with one service provider, same could be with Azure also, same could be with Google also for that matter. So either we continue with that particular service provider, there's some kind of a procurement model has to come, or these agencies have to think of some kind of interoperability among themselves, so that if I have first 5 years I was on one cloud, and if I want to move it to the other cloud, some kind of migration path or utilities need to be given, so that I easily migrate from. So if these things get addressed, I'll see much more adoption within the government for these hybrid clouds and multi-clouds at the same time.
Sure, ma'am, great answer. And it again brings me to the next question, and you talked about it a little bit, is, for example, with this modern cloud world, most organizations globally are looking at modernizing their applications through use of microservices, use of containers, and then running them through Kubernetes, which truly becomes stateless, right? Then they become the fact that these applications then can be deployed anywhere where you choose. They could be deployed on-prem, they could be deployed on a cloud, and can be moved from a cloud. So how do you see that happening within NIC, and do you see that adoption of that increasing dramatically in the coming months? And how do you see that across the government overall as well?
NIC has a responsibility of not only providing the services, also has a mandate of keep an eye on the upcoming technologies and somehow and work towards adoption in the government. So we had actually realized the potential of these microservices and containers sometime maybe 18 months ago. And since then, we have already started building, and for last 2 to 3 months, we have started offering container services to our existing government users. So in fact, even today, as I'm talking, there are 2 to 3 big projects we are getting on the container services. So it is already there. Now, whether it is cloud, VM, or container, it is very important that applications are also built cloud native, because I also come across sometimes situation, despite having this huge cloud, some applications I'm not able to scale them up because they're intrinsically not designed to scale, kind of a thing. So therefore, not only converting the new applications to be adopting microservice kind of architecture, because that gives you a huge scalability, that gives you huge pluggability, that gives you huge agility at the same time. You can write 2 components in Python, and you can write other 2 components in 2 microservices in Java, and so the kind of flexibility it gives you is humongous. So what we have done to bring, but that is something which has to change from culturally. People have to really understand. At the architect level, you need to change. So just before COVID, in the early this year, we have opened a center of excellence of microservices in Cochin. We have a big center in Cochin. And from there, now we are doing continuous webinars, and also selected some applications whom we are converting or rebuilding basic using microservice architecture. And once, so with all this kind of comprehensive approach, by educating people, by doing some applications, also providing container services, our focus is very much on moving more and more government services to this new kind of architecture. It is also syncing with current COVID situation where, you know, all of us will agree, though we all wish we come out of it very soon, but we also agree with no vaccine around, we are going to be with this uncertain times for at least 6 months to 1 year to come. So whatever we are developing today, there will be a lot of, they will need a lot of agility. You will be expected to do changes from time to time because policies may change, surrounding situations may change. So softwares also have to be designed, or systems have to be designed to be able to adopt those new changes quickly. And there, agile and microservice is the answer. So therefore, it is all the more important that today what we develop, we deploy these technologies. So we have a lot of focus on this, and we're trying to make sure that whatever new we are doing, as far as possible, we apply these new architectures and new technologies.
Sure, ma'am. And just a linked question to your work from home a little earlier. Have you seen a change on the cybersecurity requirements because of work from home and the fact that more and more people have to not now access the same applications in the data center services from anywhere? So how do you see the security landscape? Because the traditional tools and technologies that would have got deployed would have been deployed in a manner where people were coming to an office and then accessing the data center, versus now people accessing the same from anywhere and going to a cloud. So do you see a relook at security architectures, the way applications are deployed and consumed by entities?
Yes, of course, because after this, cybersecurity has always been a concern. It has become a bigger concern nowadays. You know, there are multiple dimensions to it. The very first thing, like when we did all this access to home, people give this thing. One of the major effort our teams have to put in to define or design the secure channels, whether it was VPN or whether it was multi-factor authentication, biometrics-based analysis, depending on how sensitive that system was. So all those things had to be thought over and designed. But if this becomes a new normal, then those things happen, case to case basis. We really need to perhaps rework on our cybersecurity policies and bring in these kinds of provisions. There are two things happening when I'm working from home. One, in any cases, I'm getting from unprotected networks. Earlier, we were at least certain applications or certain rights to applications were only given from the protected network, from the known network. Now somebody could be using a laptop, somebody could be using a mobile phone. So unprotected device, and you could use any public internet to come to it. You had to, both of those things were there. So you need to not only define this high order of secure access, you need to put a lot of effort on your perimeter security of continuous vigil of the traffic happening onto it. With this also, this has happened work from home. I mean that's what I was telling with this virtual meeting happenings. Now meetings have no time. 18 hours a day you're doing meetings, you know, and you are not even given a 4 o'clock one meeting finishes, 5 o'clock next, 6 o'clock next, because that's how a PA knows you're sitting on your seat, so you can easily switch from one VC client. So people have no time. So this access will also be 24, because somebody is working in the day, somebody is working in the night. So that also needs to be monitored. And the most critical thing is, because all of us use these mobile phones and our laptops, in office you could put a lot of discipline in terms of, you know, keeping the hygiene of these devices to a great extent. But now when you have these devices which are all over, and all of us, each one of us is not that sensitive, especially when I'm talking of my clients, government officials at all levels are not that sensitive. You download all kinds of mobile apps and then they put a malware in your system, and then so those are another risk. So that also we've been really seriously thinking that how should we really go about, because that will add, if you have to secure each and every device each and every government employee is having, this is a huge budget also at the same time. So a lot of internal thinking is going on, that how do you really go about approaching this whole issue in a most optimal manner at the same time.
Sure, ma'am. My last question, in fact, and to be honest, and we have as VMware a point of view on a lot of these things, helping the problems that you just described, whether it's security, whether it's moving to multi-cloud, not get a vendor lock-in with a cloud provider, and how do we help microservices and training people who want to build applications on a modern platform. So my last question, ma'am, is how do you think organizations like us or the private sector can really help NIC better than what we are doing today, or what could we do more to help NIC on the path of digitizing India faster, better, secure? What could we do? What could we do more?
A lot you can do. Everybody can do a lot that way. You see, first of all, in our projects, as you are aware, and we do a lot of outsource in terms of getting a part of the software done from outside. We do a lot of in-source of skilled personnel to be working on the sensitive projects which we do on site. And today, I mean, honestly speaking, if I have to give a project and say I need completely microservice, getting a skilled resource itself is a challenge. It's not that easy. Sometimes I have seen people cry for 2 months that I'm not getting the right kind of a people. So getting a skilled personnel, particularly in these new technologies, is a huge thing, and I am really looking forward as many of as you can help in getting me this. That's one aspect we need. Second, you know, as our cloud will increase, our infrastructure is increasing, and our requirement to monitor it practically on 24/7 basis when the traffic will go. We need to get in a lot of automation into our infrastructure management, so that most of things happen on a policy basis. Then a human intervention is needed from time to time. So that's another area where we are looking for that. How do we really do it in a most efficient and quick manner? Orchestration at the same time, the automation of big projects. How do you bring automation of the infra management is a main thing. Third, you know, recently we've also opened a lot of center of excellence. We have center of excellence in microservices, center of excellence in artificial intelligence, machine learning, chatbots, and we also have a center of excellence in blockchain in Bangalore. And these all centers are particularly looking for building the possible solutions, pilots, and POCs. They have also rolled out some small applications in the government. So we are really looking for skilled people in these areas, as well as experienced people in these areas who can come back, who can come and work with us. That how do we deploy these technologies into government solutions, help government deliver its services to the citizens, particularly the last mile citizens or the people in rural India, where we have challenge of language literacy and a connectivity to a great extent. So helping us build these technologies will again another help we always do. A lot of people are helping us, but everyone is always welcome to help.
Sure. So I took skills, especially on microservices or new technologies, automation and orchestration for infra management as the cloud grows, and again participate and contribute to your centers of excellence with skills that can augment the capacity. Absolutely good work for us to do, ma'am, and we'll come back with the team on how can we work again. Thank you. Over to you, Kailash. I don't have more questions for ma'am, but over to you.
No, thank you so much, and thank you so much, Gaurav, and thank you so much, ma'am, for being a part of Governance Now's today's masterclass on cloud with NIC. And what I could infer from, you know, from the entire talk was that, first of all, naturally, ma'am listed out all the areas where NIC actually braced itself up right from April when the lockdown was there with the end of the financial year, and how new initiatives were taken so that the regular work of the government is also taken care of, and certain new measures which were the need of the hour, and which we still believe that for coming 6 to 8 months, that will be the need of the hour, and also various other issues. Lastly, you mentioned about the availability of the skilled manpower to carry out certain aspects, and the need, the enhanced need for cybersecurity, and how technology can actually help up to it. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us for today's masterclass, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting this session along with me, and thank you so much, ma'am. Namaskar. Over to you, Pragya.
Thank you, Neeta ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Adhikari, and thank you, Gaurav, for joining us today.